Good morning and welcome to another video. I wanted to talk a little bit about this process of awakening, and I want to talk about seeing through like mental illusions. And of course, this is essentially what this is maybe all about. I don't know, or it's a very big topic, but it's something that is ever unfolding, something that you, at least I, see deeper and deeper layers of as I integrate this process. And in the beginning, it was more like seeing through the ideas I had about myself on a daily basis, like my social roles, like the more like the overt ideas about who I was. Like, oh, I'm that kind of character, I'm that kind of character, right? And then it goes more subtle. So, for example, yesterday I was facing an aspect, which is essentially what this is. It's inner aspects, inner ego aspects that we have identified with, which is like a story, usually like a story about who we are, like a state that we move into, and something that we think we are. Also with emotions, right? So all the selves or the aspects carries emotions. And I faced my inner clown, like the funny me, and that like constantly make jokes, makes fun of ourselves, and that kind of thing. And it's something that I used to play, step into when I was a child, because if I was funny, then I was safe. So it was kind of like a coping mechanism. And it was more like, even though other people liked it, it was a sadness that usually followed that sort of role that I played. So you can call it like a sad clown complex, right? And of course, in some way, it's liberating to allow yourself to be silly and funny and all of that. There's nothing wrong about that in itself. But the moment it becomes an ego, an identity, it's when the suffering arises. Is when I cling on to something that I take myself to be. And that's when it becomes uncomfortable, right? And I can remember it from I was very like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 that I started to play this out in my life. And even though I did it unconsciously, but I felt uncomfortable when I did it. For example, I cracked a joke, I made silly faces and stuff like that, right? There's nothing wrong about that in itself, but it felt some way, like the moment the ego came in and started to identify with it, it's when it became uncomfortable. So this is what the mind does. It identifies. It identifies with thoughts and emotions and external aspects too, right? We identify with maybe our style, we identify with our taste of music, we identify with our favorite movie or our car or our relationships, And I always felt from a very young age, even though I couldn't put my hand on it, and of course I was also sucked into that sort of the ego force, which we all are, I believe, as human beings. That's a part of the human conditioning. I always felt it was uncomfortable. At some level, it was uncomfortable. And that's when separation also started to occur. When I started to see myself as that thing, that person, that kind of personality, right? And in some way, we find like comfort in identity too, right? We find safety or belonging or a sense of like predictability in a sense of identity. I'm that kind of person. That's me, right? So that's sort of like a way we try to gain control, and sort of also a way we bypass and suppress our emotions by just creating an identity to sort of like counteract it in some way. So when we start to see through the illusion of identities, and we see them as just like a mask we take on in a role play, And at some level, we start to believe they're real, right? Even though they're just sort of like a costume we take on, and we can take them off any time. So, and we don't take them off by pushing them away. We take them off by realizing what it is and then accepting it, which is unconditional love. So there's no need to manipulate these. There's no need to fight with them. There's no need to like have an agenda other than seeing reality for what it is. And the more we start to take on these masks, the less there is of me. Like there's less I, there's less Julie left. Because what is that? It's a story, it's a concept, it's a thought. I am, for sure, but I don't like define myself anymore. Of course, there are situations where I step into a role and I step into like I react, and I, of course, especially with other people, right? We tend to step into a certain role depending on who we are around, and also in certain social situations, in work situations. But when I'm alone, I feel more and more, I feel less and less, I would say. I feel more and more present and less objectified, I suppose. And it's very, very liberating. And I also want to add that, especially lately, it started, I guess, in November, like glimpses. It started like in a few objects in the room, like the lamp and like the door handle. And I saw it then in other people's eyes. I saw it on my hands. So I got all these glimpses of something that I couldn't really say what it was. But it was like reality. Now it's in every object more and more. I can see it everywhere. It's like the world, like everything around me becomes more and more beautiful. It becomes more and more sharp and alive. It's like everything around me emanates love. It's like love just radiates from everything. And I feel less and less separate from the things around me. And I have glimpses where I am everything. But not as a person, more like the real. It's more real than real, I would say. Of course, there are deeper layers of realization than I've had. And of course, the ego comes very quickly in and creates a story, right, about me that had the experience. So it identifies with the experience, right? That's very common. And there's only one thing to do, and that is to surrender and see through these ideas. And see through the processing that goes on here. The filtering, the processing, the stories, the forever going identification. That's all you can really do, because you can't change what's out there. It will just reveal itself when it's ready. And yeah, it's a beautiful truth when you get out of from the other side, on the other side of the dark night of the soul, at least in my experience. So yeah, I want to keep it short and sweet. So if you have any comments or questions, then just feel free to leave a comment below. And you can also like this video and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, much love and namaste.